From the Chesapeake Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental reporting, this is Chesapeake Uncharted, the podcast that uncovers stories about the bay, its interconnected ecosystem, and the people who rely on them. I'm Jeremy Cox. On today's episode,
on almost any river or creek of the Chesapeake, you will find that the largest critter down there by biomass. Is eels. Yeah. I mean, which means they're a huge factor in the bay ecology. They eat everything and everything eats them.
This is the second in our series of episodes spotlighting the new Bay Journal film, Chesapeake Rhythms. In episode 1, we heard exclusively from the film's producers. We learned why they decided to tell the story of Chesapeake Bay migrations and why they fixed their attention on eels, monarch butterflies, shorebirds, and tundra swans. On today's episode, it's all about eels. And for that, I turn the microphone over to my colleague, Bay Journal reporter, Lauren Hines Acosta.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm Lauren Hines Acosta. We're starting our journey with the elusive American eel. We will talk with the producers about how they managed to capture a few on film. But first, let's listen to a clip from our new film, Chesapeake Rhythms, featuring an eel's journey.
The brackish tidal creek, draining fresh water from a remnant crease of swamp transecting suburban sprawl, is in full spring mode. Willows and maples mint new green, ospreys hover, cormorants dive. The stream of motorists on Racetrack Road takes scant notice. Maybe the sight of Alexis Park and Keith Whiteford going over the guardrail and down the steep creek bank in hip waders draws a glance. But none of the drivers could imagine what summons the two Maryland Department of Natural Resources biologists here each spring.
There we go, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's a good catch. We have an eel trap located at Turville Creek that basically collects glass eels. As glass eels are entering the coastal bays from the continental shelf from the Atlantic Ocean, and they're making that journey up looking for fresh water. So we have an eel trap out there that we put fresh water through to attract the glass eels. And as they enter the trap, they will go up the ramp into a well and then drop into a bag that we have attached to the side of the trap. And we will do counts on those glass eels. If there's a small number of eels, we'll actually count them individually. If there's a large number of eels, we do a volumetric count.
Yeah, you want the sample pretty clean.
Yeah, just checking the sample, making sure there's nothing in there. It's to give us a relative abundance index of the glass eels, of the young of the year.
Along with great blue herons and humans, eels are probably the most widely distributed of all Chesapeake species. The returning eels will spread throughout the Chesapeake and its 40-some rivers and thousands of streams, eating, being eaten, vital parts of the ecosystem.
In most years, our sampling period is approximately 8 to 9 weeks. Our best year, we've caught approximately 250,000 eels. Our worst year in total was probably 20,000 eels. And this year so far, we're probably between 70 and 75,000 eels. And we still have the rest of April, so we still have 3 more weeks of the survey left.
The biologists will release the little eels trapped here today to continue their upstream journey.
Before the Conowingo Dam and the other dams that were built above Conowingo, the eels were freely able to move up the entire Susquehanna River up into New York. And once those dams were built, there was a major blockage, which negatively impacted a lot of their habitat, being able to reach all that freshwater habitat. So there has been a movement to pass eels either through eel ladders or trap and transport, where they actually catch eels and then move them and stock them above Conowingo Dam. So that has been going on since I think around 2005 or 2006, and they've stocked over several million eels so far in the last 20 years.
Glass eels are obviously a delicacy for almost anything and everyone. As an eel gets larger, they actually become one of the kind of the top predators in a system. There's still a lot of unknown about the American eel. It has a very complex kind of life cycle. A lot of fish in the Chesapeake Bay are anagenous, where the American eel is contagious, and it actually will spawn out in the ocean in the Sargasso Sea. The larvae will then drift with the currents and move along the continental shelf, basically turning into glass eels at that time and working their way up into the coastal bays of Maryland and into the Turville Creek area where we can sample them.
They will transform from that glass eel to an alver stage.
That's a nice dark one right there.
And the alver stage is basically just a small yellow eel. They will spend up to 15 years in freshwater in the yellow eel stage.
They all look like they're getting a little
Darker, yeah. And then they will basically transform into their last life stage as the silver eel, all in preparation to make that migration back out to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. And from Maryland, that journey could be 1,000 miles to 1,500-mile journey back to the Sargasso Sea, in which they would spawn and then die.
Frostburg University biologist Rich Raisley uses an electroshocking device to sample Deer Creek on the upper Chesapeake for mature eels that will soon leave for the Sargasso. Just what triggers a given eel to go is poorly understood.
We were using a backpack electrofisher to catch eels in Lower Deer Creek. The electrofisher has a small battery that puts a weak electric current into the water. Since eels and other aquatic organisms have more salts in their body fluids and tissues than surrounding water, the current passes through the organism and temporarily immobilizes them. As soon as we cut the current, the eel swims away. Deer Creek drains an area of Harford County, Maryland. The watershed that it flows through is largely agricultural, but there has been a lot of housing development that can potentially have adverse effects on the organisms that live there.
So I grew up in Baltimore County, and across the street from my house, a very, very small stream, and I was always in the stream catching crayfish, minnows, eels. It wasn't until I actually went to college to realize every eel that I caught as a little boy actually traveled well over 1,000 miles to 1,500 miles from the Sargasso Sea back to that stream.
Hi, this is Laura Lutz, editor at the Chesapeake Bay Journal. I hope you're enjoying our podcast, and I'd like to invite you to join the community of Bay Journal readers. If you care about climate change, wildlife, clean air, healthy communities, and of course the Bay and its rivers, you'll find news you can use at the Bay Journal, along with some great ideas for outdoor travel. Our subscriptions are free. Check us out at bayjournal.com and click on subscribe to start receiving the best independent environmental news in the Bay region.
This season, we're taking a behind-the-scenes look at our new film, Chesapeake Rhythms. It explores the migration of 4 creatures that visit the Bay region. This episode is all about the elusive American eel. I have with me the producers of the film who can tell us what it was like chasing this slimy fish. Dave Harp directed the film and acted as cinematographer. He is a photojournalist and has been capturing the Bay on film for more than 30 years. You can hear Tom Horton in the film as the narrator and writer. He has written about the Chesapeake Bay for the past 50 years. Sandy Cannon Brown edited the film. She owns a film production company and taught environmental filmmaking at American University. Chesapeake Rhythms marks the 8th film they've made together. I understand y'all chose eels because they're kind of a mystery. Dave, you touched on that in the other episode. So can you explain why they're so elusive?
Well, just to start with, the most striking thing is eels at some point in their life, and it's not the same point for every eel. It can be when they're 2 or 3 years old, when they're 8 or 10 years old, or it can be never. At some point, most eels leave the rivers and streams and creeks and estuaries of North America and Europe, for that matter, leave the Chesapeake Bay, and they go over the continental shelves, and then they go deep, so deep that no one has ever been able to track an eel from the time they leave the coasts to the time they congregate at thousands of feet deep in the Sargasso Sea and spawn. We can't prove that they actually do that. We're pretty sure they do, and we're darn sure that they don't have anything left to get back. They spawn and die, kind of like a lot of salmon. And then the young are delivered by ocean currents back toward the coastlines. And so just the fact that, a large part of their life cycle has never been seen by humans, never been photographed. People have tried with more resources than us to get cameras way down there in the black depths of the Sargasso Sea, which incidentally is located in what's often referred to as the Bermuda Triangle. It's the only sea not bounded by any land. It's bounded by 4 ocean currents, and it's kind of an almost stagnant body of water. So, there's a big mystery right there. The major part of eel's life cycle has never been witnessed by humans.
Yeah, also, I think the mystery of the eel is that most people, most of the viewers of this film, I would hazard to guess, have never seen an eel, at least they've never seen a glass eel where you can see its heart beating inside of it, the size of an earthworm. They've never seen a silver eel. We didn't get any silver eels, but they're a mysterious fish, and it's not something most people go out and try to catch.
And yet, if you take one of these electroshocking devices, which we show in the film, and run a current into the water, which brings fish to the surface, just stuns them, doesn't kill them. If you do that on almost any river or creek of the Chesapeake, you will find that the largest critter down there by biomass. Is eels. Yeah. I mean, which means they're a huge factor in the bay ecology. They eat everything, and everything eats them. So to take them out, but again, like Dave says, most people maybe seen a picture of an eel. Maybe if they fish, they've hooked an eel and wish they hadn't because they're hard to get off the hook and slimy. But they just don't have a clue that down there beneath your canoe, beneath your hip waders, if you're in a creek, or beneath your boat, just full of eels. There's a lot of them.
I'll say watching the film, oh my gosh. I mean, they're super cool, but watching them like squirm, oh my God, it made my skin crawl. But they are so fascinating. So, Sandy, I was wondering, as someone who had to watch all the footage, can you kind of describe to our listeners, what does a eel look like?
As they were saying, there are many different stages of the eel. And at that very early stage, they just look like tiny worms. And that probably is what you're talking about as far as being a little bit hard to take when you see all the little swarmy things in there. It was interesting with the biologists who were working with them, in seeing them coming in great quantities. I've never seen that in real life. I just had never seen that before. But it was interesting to see the changes in them. And by the time they got to their end stage, they look much more like a big snake than they do a little tiny worm. It was an eye-opener. It really was.
I found that the early stages when the biologists were catching the eels down at Turkville Creek, they're very hard to photograph because they're so tiny and they're out in the water. So they were trapping them, and I put an aquarium in the back of the car of the truck of the biologist, and we put some of the glass eels in and put a light over it, and I did some slow motion filming of them. And I just find it mesmerizing. As I said before, you can see their heart, you can see their internal organs inside the fish, inside their bodies, and just the sinuous motion of them. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, and one of the aspects we touched on very lightly is it's a whole nother story is the business of smuggling eels illegally to Europe and Asia. No one knows yet how to make eels spawn in captivity. So the only way Europeans and Asians can satisfy their appetites for eel, which is considerable, Americans don't eat them much. They're fine to eat, but anyway, the markets in Europe and Asia, they have to get the baby eels from America to raise to market size, and there's a lot of illegal capture of these little glass eels coming in from the Sargasso as they come into the coasts. I think only one state, Maine, has a legal harvest, and that means it's not too hard for a smuggler to catch some near Ocean City and take them up to Maine and sell them. It's hard to regulate that. So this market in eels, and you can pack, I can't remember how many thousand or 100,000 little eels in something the size of a basketball, and ship that and get
Well, in
several
Maine,
$1,000 a pound.
yeah,
for
I was
them.
going to say
Yeah.
in Maine, they were getting. Read a New Yorker article. They were getting $1,500 a pound for glass eels.
Yeah, that's a valuable seafood.
I have a question that I still have from the film to ask the gentleman. But in the film, we show that the eels are so important that in their life cycle that at the Conowingo Dam, there are chutes to help them get across the dam. And I just have always wondered, why are eels so important to us that we would go to that trouble?
Well, broadly, it goes back to they eat lots of stuff and lots of stuff eats them. However, what's really motivated that going to great lengths to move eels upstream around Conowingo Dam so they can access the greater Susquehanna River is scientists figured out relatively recently that certain species of mussel native to the Susquehanna were in long-term decline. And the reason turned out to be that their larvae depended on lodging in the gills of eels to carry them upstream and spread them around. And once eels were absent from the Susquehanna, these mussels couldn't spawn. So, and some of them are endangered, I think. So that really motivated it. They've taken out a piece of the ecosystem, and other pieces of the system were collapsing because of that. So the eels, the larval mussels lodge in their gills, and the eels carry them upstream and keep the population healthy. So yeah, who would have thunk?
Y'all actually ended up answering some of the other questions I had planned. I guess just Dave, how else were you able to photograph the eels? Because I know you'd mentioned the tank, but I didn't know they seem hard to capture. So how'd you go about that?
Well, I did some underwater photography, and I'm not well versed on that. I'm not real good at it, but I have an underwater rig for my camera. And when we were electroshocking up on Deer Creek to do the mature eels, I both did some underwater work and also just when they were releasing the eels, would just literally walk with them as they were swimming away and shoot straight down, and we used a lot of that footage. I think Sandy used about everything I shot on that. And as I said earlier, photographing the glass eels as working with the biologists on that was very interesting. And the people interface, the people and the animals that we use throughout this film were important, to showing the science and the natural history of these animals. So, I tried to show as much of that and of the work with the animals and not just the natural history. We have fairly small budgets and not can't spend an enormous amount of time going after each animal. So, we did the best we could with what we had.
Yeah, eels are a tough subject, and even tougher is the silver eel, which is the coloration that eels take on just before they get ready to go to the Sargasso. Because at that point, they're not feeding anymore, so you can't bait them in. That is one of the tried and true methods of photographing wildlife is you bait it in, or you go to a watering hole, or you go to some place where there's lots of food and you set up and you get your photographs. With the eels, you can't use that. You have to just go poking around in a stream with an electroshocker. And this is not easy to do. It's exhausting work for that tiny percentage of eels that are ready to spawn. You get a lot of eels that aren't ready to go spawn, and they're not what you want. So if you go online, Google, and try to find images, good photographs of that silver eel stage, worldwide, you'll find a handful of photos, probably mostly taken in a laboratory or something.
Right.
It's really it's one of the tougher things I think Dave's ever
Well,
attempted.
yeah, and I don't know we could have spent enough time. I mean, I could have spent 2 or 3 years just on eels, I'm sure. And our budget, the credits in the Tom Hanks series, The Americas, which has incredible natural history filming in it, but just the credits in that probably cost more than our film, the total budget of our film, just a credit roll.
I think that it's very interesting too that you can hire all these people and have all these crews, but over these past 10 years, it's the three of us basically, plus some extra help that's needed at the end. But Dave is basically out there. Sometimes he is the producer, the director, the cameraman, the audio tech all at once, and trying to do that with critters that you really hard to direct. It's really hard to tell an eel to stay in place while you get your shot. So Dave is amazing when it comes to just getting the job done on his own.
I think my final words when we finished filming eels in that swift running creek were, "We're too old for this, Dave."
Yeah.
First time I've been thinking that day was going to come, and it came that day. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on chest waders. I'm carrying a camera in one hand. I have a walking stick in the other so I can stay upright and, trying to film. That was very, very challenging because you don't want to go in the drink, you don't want to go have your waders fill up and your camera go in the water. And
it was probably
audio
our
gear.
last eel film.
Yeah, because y'all are like in the creek below the road, like you're in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sandy can't wait for another eel film.
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm not turning it down.
Unless you have more to add, thanks so much for joining us on this episode.
Thanks.
As you've heard, eels help with the water quality and the ecosystem's food chain, but eels also have a unique connection to humans in the Chesapeake Bay. I spoke with Brad Hatch. He is the chief judge on the Patawomic Indian Tribal Council. His tribe has been fishing eel for generations, but these days, he's catching and releasing eels using an eel pot. It's an oval-shaped basket with an inverted funnel inside. Eels squeeze in to eat bait and struggle to leave through the funnel. We spoke about why eels are important to his tribe and the Chesapeake Bay. Yeah, can you remind me like how you got into this trade?
Yeah, sure. So, I went to school for anthropology and archaeology. And I had kind of grown up knowing what eel pots were. I mean, they were always around. And people kind of talked about them. And so I sort of had a sense of what they were and kind of why they were important to us. But by the time I came back, there were really only two people left in the community who knew how to make them. So when I got back, I asked one of the guys to teach me how to make them. And he taught me how to make them. And we made one together. And then by the time we were working on the second one, he passed away during that time. And, it made me realize like, here's an important part of our history as Potomac people and an important part of our culture, like just within the community, like people know what they are. They they understand their importance. And, now there's only two of us left that have any idea about how to make these things. And so after that, I felt like it was important to carry the tradition on to the next generation, and also to get, more people aware of what they are, why they're important, and just their history and how it relates to other, indigenous groups in the up and down the Atlantic. I mean, it's not like we're the only people that make them. Nothing's done in isolation.
Why are eels culturally significant and to Virginia, but also to your tribe?
For us, eels are important because, first of all, I mean, they're, for a long time, were a very important part of our subsistence. There are people, citizens of the tribe now, elders, and people that actually aren't really elders that remember eating eels growing up. But they became really important to us after the Civil War. And a lot of the land had been devastated. The livestock had been requisitioned by the Army. Crops had been destroyed. A lot of trees had been cut and burned down. Some people's homes had been destroyed. So it was the potential to be a very depressed economy throughout the Reconstruction period. And so what people in our community did was they kind of turned back to the water, to fishing, which is something they had known for many generations. And that was a resource that hadn't been as, as exploited by the Army occupation. The fish were still in the creeks and in the river. So that's something that our people knew how to make a living on. And they knew that they could make a living on it. And so that's what they did.
Um, yeah, so now that like the tribes had to shift once again, what role do eels play in your tribes? Because you mentioned you're not really fishing them, it's more of catch and release. So yeah, what role would they play now, do you think?
Yeah, well, so I think eels still play an important role within the tribe. I think it's less of a commercial or subsistence role, but really more of a symbolic role. I mean, I think, the eel pot itself in some ways has come to be a symbol of our identity, not only because it's something related to our subsistence and related to things that our elders did for a living, but it also represents our connection to the water for generations. It represents our connection to the land because it's made out of split white oak. So our ability to know not only the forests of where we live, but also the waters is really important, I think, represented in that one object. Wire eel pots have been around, at least we know in Virginia, as early as the 1700s. But our community chose to make them out of split oak instead of buying wire pots or making them out of chicken wire or whatever that would have been accessible. And so what that means to me is that, we made a conscious decision to use a natural material and to not only use a natural material, but to weave it like a basket, which is something that, indigenous people have been doing for a very long time also. So in that way, we were able to kind of resist those colonial pressures to switch to those modern materials and use mass produced things. Instead, we were able to, rely on the landscape that we lived in to provide for us, not only in terms of making the trap, but also in using the trap to then catch fish from the waters that we knew to either eat or to sell so that we could make money to feed our families.
Well, let's see. That's really all my main questions. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know. I could probably talk about eel pots and eels all day, but I think eels are like a really cool fish. I think these days, I think a lot of people from the outside are kind of put off by eels because they kind of look a little bit like a snake. Um, but they are just a fish. Um, and the other thing that I think is really cool about eels is that they're catadromous fish. So they live most of their life in the fresh water and then they go out to the ocean spawn. And for the longest time, like up until, this past century, people didn't even really understand that eels went to the Sargasso Sea to breed. And there were all kinds of like these weird theories about where eels came from. Like they just sprung from the mud in the bottoms of creeks and rivers and all this kind of thing. Like people just had no clue about where eels were from or anything like that. And it's just surprising to me that there can be a fish that is so abundant and so important in so many cultures. And yet it was really only a few years ago that we got actual, like, full scientific evidence that they're breeding in the Sargasso Sea. And it took that many years to do it. It's just like, it boggles my mind. Like, we hold these supercomputers in our hand every day. But up until a couple years ago, we didn't really understand where eels were coming from and how they were breeding and all that kind of thing. I think it really just underscores like how much is left out there in the world to learn.
Well, that was Lauren Hines Acosta reporting for the Chesapeake Bay Journal. I just wanted to drop in here before the theme music plays to just let you know that if you like what you're hearing with Chesapeake Rhythms, you can see it as well. And you can find that video on the Bay Journal website at bayjournal.com and search under the Multimedia tab. Or you can find it on our YouTube page. Just head over to that YouTube search bar and type in Chesapeake Bay Journal. Okay, on with the credits. Chesapeake Uncharted is brought to you by the Bay Journal, an independent nonprofit environmental news source for the Chesapeake Bay region. This episode was produced by Jeremy Cox and Lauren Hines Acosta. The story was edited by Laura Lutz. Our marketing and advertising director is Jackie Kane. You can find more episodes of Chesapeake Uncharted on your favorite streaming service or on our website, bayjournal.com. If you like what you're hearing, sign up for a free Bay Journal news subscription too, also on our website at bayjournal.com. Until next time, this is Jeremy Cox. Take care.